So we're being recorded now.
We are. No secret recording now. All your secrets I can't
That's right.
secretly record and let everyone know. Hi everyone. Today I have Justin back with me. Hiya Justin, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, will do. Thank you very much for having me back again. This is our second conversation about my books and about life, living and things like that in general. I'm an author of now four books. They are mostly historical fiction. I found this interesting way of describing what I write, because the genre is actually secret history thrillers. Okay, and people say to me, "What's a secret history thriller?" So I say to them, "Okay, if the historian has a set of facts that they have worked with and have written about, and probably what people know about in the history books, if those set of facts is the motorway to get from A to B to C to D to E, and they are the set of facts, my story starts at A but takes the B road to get to E. Okay, so I take the same starting point and and I stay in the same territory as the historian, but I'm taking a completely different route to get to the destination. So the territory is familiar. Like in this book, we're going to talk about a set in China. You know, it's got Chinese things and Chinese demons and Chinese dragons and Chinese footwear and Chinese customs. But the story I'm telling about a war of succession and the coming of age of China and of the young man in the story, it's not what you find in the history books. But some of the facts you will. So hence I'm taking the B road. So I think that's a by way of introduction to me and my books. So there you
are. So let's start at the very beginning. Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
That's a good question. Probably not, actually. I've always been a voracious reader of fiction, and when I was in uni in my 20s, I did write a novel in longhand, because that's how you sort of did things in those days. I've still got it somewhere, about ancient Greek gods, I think it was about, because I was into Greece at the time, ancient Greece. But I never published it, but I did publish a short story in the local student rag, and didn't really write any more fiction after that. But what I did do was a lot of research on my own about history, particularly about Egypt, China, and Prussia, Germany, which actually were the territories I explored in my first three novels. So in answer to your question, I came back to writing fiction about 10, 12 years ago, and decided that I would try and combine those two things. They do say, as you know, write about what you know about, which is kind of problematic in a way, because, I mean, do we really know about anything when it comes down to it? I was reflecting today that, are we not just, you know, if all our opinions are formed from the newspapers and the media and other people, doesn't that make us just clones? Do you know what I mean? We actually, and I suppose what I'm trying to point to is, one of the things I found most difficult in life is to think for yourself. It's really to come to conclusions using your own experience, because it's so easy to pick up other people's opinions. Clint Eastwood had this famous saying, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one.
Yeah.
Undeniable. Typical Clint Eastwood. He must have been in one of his Magnum days. So yeah, just reflecting on what we do know about, I thought I knew a little bit about those historical periods. So I went back into them. And like I said to you before we began, one of the things I've certainly discovered in writing is that you have to write about stuff not only that you know about, but stuff you are passionate about and stuff that you love. Because if you're not passionate and loving the story, what are people going to read when they're reading your story? Are they going to read you're bored with the story? And alongside that, another reason why you need the passion is, sure as God made little apples, you will come across a time when you're stuck, when you run out of ideas, you don't know where to go, your characters have deserted you. So you need the passion to get through the difficult bits. Passion's fine to get you through the stuff when you're writing. It's like the difficult bits. I think they're the bits actually in our own lives that determine people. It's easy to ride the crest of the wave of success. It's how you get through the difficult bits. So it's the same for a writer. So you need the passion. So I had, some material I was working with, like I said, on ancient Egypt, old China, and Germany, Prussia, and took those territories, took those B roads to tell a complete different story about those countries and customs and so on. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer to a question.
No,
I don't know if there's anything you want to pick up on there. I'm obviously in a bit of a amusing mood today.
Well, actually, all I was thinking is you're talking about trying to form your own opinions, and I suppose you have to be the person that doesn't take everything on face value and actually goes and checks, to be able to have your own view on things, instead of just accepting what the media tell you, I suppose is the only, not everyone does that, do they? They just accept what they're told, whereas some people actually go away and find out the truth or somewhere between.
Yeah, well, I think the best you can do is to try, because that's the best you can do, is to try to find out what things are, why things are as they are. So yeah, so that these books, I suppose, are a residue of the passage of time of me trying to find out why we're in the society and civilization and times that we are.
And what made you take the decision to actually go for it, to sit down, to write the book, and then to get it published?
Yeah, I suppose, about 10, 12 years ago, I sort of sat down and thought, well, what am I going to do in my later years? I'm going to have a bit more time to spend on something or other. And like I was alluding to earlier, I guess I looked at the things that have always been of interest and of a passion to me, and history and literature, and to some degree, world literature, as well as some philosophy and, natural history, even customs of the world, all sorts of different subjects, really. I suppose I'm a bit of an eclectic fellow, and thought, well, I'd try my hand at writing fiction using those historical areas that I had studied before, and see where I go. So that's what set me off. I'm not sure there are alternatives at the time, but I still seem to be on the same track and trying to develop the skills and the arts of a writer.
So do you have a copy of your new book to show everyone?
This one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the cover behind me. It's actually not a new, it's my second novel.
Okay,
It's not new. So it was published a couple of years ago, but I've just decided to re-promote it. Yeah, it's called The Old Dragon's Head, and I don't know if you can see the picture behind on the wall. It features a Chinese dragon holding in one paw the Pearl of Wisdom. Probably can't see that too well. And behind it is the Great Wall of China, which is where the novel is set. And in the lower part here, is the sea. That's the Great Wall meets the Yellow Sea at a place called Shanghai Wan. And it features, that's where the story is set, because the Chinese believed that the Great Wall, you can imagine it kind of goes up the hill and down the dale and up the hill and down the dale. So it's got this sinuous nature, was occupied by a serpentine creature, a numinous dragon. And of course, the old dragon's head, which in Chinese is the Lao Long Tao, is where the Great Wall, or the old dragon, meets the sea, because that's where it's having a drink. See, so I got caught by that, just reading about that. I thought, oh, it's got to be a story in this, and of course uncovered all sorts of gems about that particular place. What had happened was the Great Wall, as some of the listeners may know, was not built in one go. Obviously, it's a huge structure, thousands of miles long. And on the northeast end of China, which is about 100 kilometers east of Beijing, the Yanshan Mountains come to a halt about 10 kilometers short of the sea. And there's this passage of 10 kilometers wide, a kind of coastal passage with things like salt marshes and so on, where the wall had not been completed. The wall had so far just come up to where the mountains met this small coastal passage. So there's a 10-kilometer stretch, which was obviously of key military significance, because the Mongols had invaded in the 1200s, Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan, his grandson, but they'd been defeated. So the emperor, the Chinese emperor, the first Chinese emperor of the Ming dynasty, was looking for ways to shore up the defences of the country. So he commissioned the building of the extension of the wall from the mountains to the sea. And this is a 10-kilometer stretch, which ended at Shanghai Wan, at the sea. So I read into the history of the building of this fortress, because there wasn't just a wall. They were obviously, because it was of strategic significance, the emperor made sure that there was suitable accommodation for, horses, archers, thousands of men, because they feared, obviously, that the Mongols would invade down that passage. The irony was, oh God, there are so many ironies in history, aren't there? So with all these thousands of men, And this was completed in about 1380. Okay. The irony was that in 1644, which is well after my novel had finished, by the way, this is just historical fact, because of course the Chinese believed in karma. And one of the reasons that I kind of go into in the story is that because the Chinese had allowed the invasion of the Mongols in the 1200s, they believed they must have been living wrong. They kind of departed from the way of heaven. And so part of the background to the story I'm exploring is how the Chinese were trying to find their own new identity, which more coincided with and was in harmony with, you know, the gods and the demons and the heavenly influences, because they believed heavily in these things. So all this to give some background to that in 1644, one soldier who was stationed at this, and this is true story apparently, stationed in Shanghai One at this fortress, he was disappointed in the way the emperor was conducting himself and governing the country. And he thought that not only was he disappointed, he was appalled to the point that he couldn't support what the emperor was doing anymore because he was making such a mess of things. So he opened the gates to let in the Mongols. They just walked in. I mean, there may have been some bribery, I don't know. I didn't look into the story, but I just loved the irony of it. So there's a little bit about the setting of the story.
And it is a great setting, and it's 1400, isn't it? It starts. So 1400s China by the Great Wall is just such an atmospheric setting for a book anyway.
Yeah, I thought so too. I really got into the setting, and you know, I was surprised to find that they even had novels written at that time, or soon after, during the Ming Dynasty. So I wanted to get into, because of course the trouble is, if you read even Chinese historians today and translations of that, you're only looking at history through the mindset and the morality of someone in the 21st century. But what you want to try and do is to appreciate how they thought in the 14th or 13th or 15th century. So it's kind of, you know, if you can go to the source material, it's much better, if you see what I'm trying to say. So that's why I looked at and read some of the novels of the time and some of the short stories. I found, I can't remember what it was called. Yeah, it's on the shelf there. A collection of short stories set in the Ming Dynasty, written during that time. Very strange stories about the kinds of things they believed. And, you know, just one sticks in my mind, that it was a story about two brothers or two friends who'd made a pact for some reason to meet in a certain place at a certain time. And one of them, for some reason, was unavoidably delayed and physically couldn't make the appointment, right? So what he did was he killed himself, committed suicide, and sent his ghost to the meeting so that at least his ghost could be there. I mean, what? You know, you wouldn't think it. You know, a fictional author couldn't come up with stuff like that. And I'm thinking, what kind of mindset thinks like that? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, don't even know what to say to that.
No, exactly. You don't, do you? You just say, well, you move on to something else.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet, you know, he was doing it, I understand, for the honor of keeping the appointment, even to the point of his own death. You know what I mean? I mean, whew, it's powerful stuff in a way. But you know, to our mind today, we wouldn't go to those extremes. We'd send an email or a text
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Yeah. Definitely wouldn't commit
Yeah.
suicide. And
No.
yeah.
Send you, and you know, and then how do you send your ghost there? I mean, excuse me. You know, and
Yeah, I'd be
you,
like, yeah, I'll see you later. I'm
yeah,
off.
yeah, I'm off now. And then how would the ghost, you know, how would the ghost communicate with the guy when he got there? Was he communicating with his ghost? Maybe he did, you know, do you see what I mean? There's a wonderful story there for somebody. And that's just one of them, you know, and it's so strange to our mind. And one of the things I loved about doing the research was I realized how Eurocentric our view of history and view of ourselves and even our capability is.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I suppose what I'm pointing to is the huge value of comparison, of being able to compare different time periods, different cultures, different civilizations, because you see them in a different light. You really do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a lot of research that you've done that you just couldn't include, but you'd love to have put in?
For sure, for sure. You know, you get caught up with the time period, the way they thought about these things. You know, I mean, I remember one bit of research was that, of course, to build the wall took a huge amount of physical effort. In other words, there was a lot of people working on it. But the Chinese had this notion that it was kind of the morals of the time said that if you died, and a lot of people died building the wall, you had to be buried near to where you were born or in the village in which you were born. So there was a lot of toing and froing with dead bodies back to where they were born when they died. You know, things like that. You know, rites of passage, these kinds of things. The drinking houses, how they were organised. Because I think there's one scene in a pub, basically. Of course, they called them an inn or something. You know, and they went around on these, you know, with yokes over there, carrying things by yokes, you know, and carrying things on their heads, and people being carried around, you know, with those stilts, with this sort of with a seat on top of stilts, and the sort of mandarins will get carried around like that. And you know, I try to get into the sort of smells of the place. What would it smell like? I mean, most of it probably smelled like shit, to be honest. Because, you know, as you probably know, most cultures, other than perhaps the rich Romans, did not have exactly the most beneficial system for getting rid of their crap. You know, so it was mostly just in the street.
Lots of horses as well.
Sorry?
And lots of horses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Horses, mules, you know, so it probably just stank the place out. And then people's hygiene habits weren't exactly the same as ours. So anyway, there you go. Yeah, so all sorts of research comes up, doesn't it? And you pick up all these odd facts, and you know, you can't include them all.
If you were able to take one of your characters out for a meal, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
What, from the book? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose I don't know if you've read much medieval stuff, but one of the problems you have with a story, like particularly set in a place like China, is how to introduce a female character who's not just a housewife. Because of course, if they're a housewife, they're not really going to take part in the story that much. So this is in answer to your question, by the way. So I would probably ask to talk to Luli, who is the seer, the sort of clairvoyant in the story. And that's how I managed to introduce a female character into the story, because the Chinese had this notion of a clairvoyant. They call them someone who had yin yang eyes, which is a lovely expression.
Yeah, I love that. That was one of my favourite things, actually. I thought
it's
that
true.
was really cool.
I didn't make it up. You know, most of that stuff's not made up. You know, like I was saying about the story of the two brothers meeting in the same place. I mean, half the stuff you just don't need to make up. It's all there, really. So yeah, she was an interesting character to write, and you know, I'd ask her what she could see with their yin yang eyes. You know, because I guess that there were people, and maybe still are, who have these kinds of abilities, who can see things from afar into the future or into the past or whatever. You know, I like this sort of, I like the supernatural in my stories, but the way I characterize it is more through visions, dreams, ESP, you know, more things just on the edge of our own experience, just beyond the reach, if you like. So, because I think in that way it makes the story more believable. Yeah.
It sounds like there's loads more that you could tell about China and the building as a wall. So would you consider going back and writing a follow-on?
Well, yeah, other people have asked me that, because it does sort of leave, the story leaves, the ending does leave a few threads open. And it wasn't, I didn't have in mind writing a sequel when I left it like that. But it does, it has got enough threads to provide a follow-on. But that wasn't my intention at the time. At the moment, I'm kind of full on with a story that I mentioned to you before we came on air, which is kind of leading me down an alley which I hadn't intended to go down. But I'm enjoying the view, so I'm carrying on being led by my muse, so to speak. So at the moment, I'm full on into that story, perhaps more of that later.
Do you hide any secret jokes or messages in your books? I suppose it's harder when it's historical, but I imagine you could still sneak in some little things.
I always do. There's always. I mean, you read, did you read The Abdication the last time? Yeah. I mean, I put in a little clue right at the beginning. And this is the kind of stuff I do, but I don't make it that transparent. That the character in that story, which Donna has kindly read and reviewed, it's called The Abdication. The character is called Tula, and she has a swollen ankle. Right. And later on in the story, I mustn't give away too many spoilers, but basically, if I tell you that a swollen ankle in Greek is Oedipus, and if you think of some of the other elements in that story, I included other elements from Oedipus' story into her character. Not all of them, obviously, because she's the wrong gender. but that doesn't matter. So that's the kind of secret message I write. I base stuff in and see if anybody picks it up. Often they don't, actually. I'm always disappointed, but there you go. But I suppose you've got to be fairly widely read and be pretty switched on in a way. But I like doing those kinds of things. Yeah, I do it all the time. Sort of allude to things because I suppose it's, I suppose as a writer, you're trying to give a narrative story which occupies the conscious mind, I suppose. But in between the lines and in between the words and in the sentences, there's a sort of a feeling, there's a mood, there's a sense of what's going on, and that's more in the semi-conscious. So they're the things that you can allude to, pictures that you can provoke through the writing, and images, visions that you can try and plant in the reader's mind through the semi-conscious. So, music does that all the time to us. That's how we appreciate music so much, because it goes straight in the semi-conscious, even though we're hearing it, obviously. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is the very, very good writers, of which I don't include myself, by the way, maybe one day, they're the ones who almost like they're the musicians who go straight in the semi-conscious and tell their story there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Out of all the books you've written so far, what's been the most fun scene that you've written, and what's been the most difficult?
The fun scene. Oh, okay.
Just to keep you on your toes.
Yeah. I think if I stick to this book, because there's like 4 books to choose from. So one I was picking up earlier, there's a chapter here, chapter 33, and it's, at the beginning of each chapter in this book, I've got these little Chinese sayings, which are meant to evoke the flavor and feeling of Chinese thought and thinking and philosophy and so on. Some of them are poetic, some of them are like things from Confucius, from the Analects, from ancient Chinese law, spelt L-O-R-E. And this one in chapter 33, which I think I did enjoy writing, exploring, says, "May you live in interesting times." And underneath it, I've got ancient Chinese curse. And in it, I explain why I think it's a curse. Because most people think that to live in interesting times is a blessing. And I'm not going to tell you why I think it's a curse. You have to read the novel. But I'm not sure it really answers your question. It wasn't a particularly difficult scene to write. I suppose, in general, the scenes I find the most difficult to write are the endings, because you're trying to tie up all the loose ends, or the main loose ends of your plot threads, and of your, you're trying to resolve your character arcs. And you're trying to do it in a way which rewards the reader for sticking with you for so long. So to that sense, every word kind of counts that much more than it does, say, in chapter 5 or chapter 10. So in general, they are perhaps the last chapter or the penultimate chapters, they're the most difficult ones to write. You probably know that from reading so many books. Although a lot of books I find a lot of authors get lost in the middle of a book. And you kind of, I find myself picking up books these days, and
not getting past halfway, because I feel the author's kind of not following the organic progression of the story. They're perhaps following maybe what I've done as well in the past, that are following the way they'd intended to go with the story. But because the story's gone in a different way, they've refused to take that route, the natural organic route. And they said, no, I'm going to go it this way and stick to that. I don't know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
know
not
a lot
going
of
to name any
authors.
authors. I can't think of any books, but I'm just talking generically.
Yeah, I know it's quite a common thing to get stuck about 30,000 words as well. And so, yeah, I imagine that would be where it would sort of go off. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Yeah, reading so many. Luckily, I don't notice that too often, but yeah, I do notice it. But obviously,
Yeah.
I don't have a name either. But yeah.
So what would you say are the most difficult bits that authors have trouble with? Is there any particular area?
I can't think of anything actually.
I mean, beginning, middle, or end, for example.
Middle, always, absolutely.
It's the middle, yeah.
Yeah, always.
I call it the sag in the middle, you know, where the sort of it takes off and then suddenly goes droop.
Yeah.
You know, and as a writer, I'm really aware of that, because I'm thinking, am I still going up or am I going? No.
Yeah, very few people.
That's why you've got to have the passion, you know, because if you're not, you know, interested in what your damn character's doing, how the hell is the reader going to be?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Yeah, it's always, I think a couple of people have trouble ending, but only because they're attached to their characters. But yeah, it's always the middle, always.
Yeah, interesting. And another one, I suppose, is perhaps less obvious, but just as crucial, is what I would call transitions, where you're moving from one scene to another. And sometimes that can be clunky if you're not careful, but other times it can be overwritten. So it's getting the balances right there is just as important, because you want to take the reader with you, but you want to take them with you in a way that they're happy with what's going on. You know, you are leading them by the hand, but you don't want to sort of yank them across the threshold, or go over the threshold so slowly that they're bored by the time they get into the house the house of the next chapter, so to speak. So transitions can be quite problematic as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're editing, what are your most overused words or phrases?
So, I think I use so. And I suppose, let me see. Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of filler phrases, you know, after that, sooner or later, following on, you know, and these are stuff that as a young author you think are okay, but actually, I mean, I'm surprised that, you know, I reckon you can lose 10%, you can cut 10% of verbiage from a book of 100,000 words, no trouble, just by cutting out those, you know, link phrases which you don't actually need. You know, I've got an ongoing debate, for example, as to whether you should say she nodded or she nodded her head, because you can't nod anything else, can you?
No.
So really all you need is she nodded. And yet most people will put she nodded her head. So you can get rid of 50% of the words there, but you've got to, you know, you still got to go and find them, and, you know. But I had quite a fraught engagement with editing. I didn't like editing at all to begin with, when I first started writing.
But then I realized that I didn't like it because I wasn't any good at it. So I decided to get better at it. I'm not, I'm not proficient or expert at all, but I've got to the point where I know a bit about what I'm doing, and therefore can at least see the results and enjoy the, enjoy the finished product a little bit more, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can see now the benefits, especially if you just write a first draft, that you just write what comes out, and then actually when you edit, that's when you're actually bringing it, to where it makes sense. So I can see now the benefits of editing, and I don't think people that read a book will realize quite how many times that would have been changed before it gets.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand actually now the importance, but it's frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I because that is one of the arts and skills you have to learn, I guess. Writing is one, but editing is just as important. But even then, I will use beta readers and editors. I mean, one of the interesting things I find about first draft is on reading it, I now look for plot threads that I hadn't intended to put in there, but which are there. And I'm thinking, hey, that's interesting. And also, one of the lessons I learned from a professional editor early on in my career was some scenes need to be written out. I think in a draft that I sent this editor, I'd kind of alluded to some particular scene, and he said, you need to write that scene out. So I expanded it into a chapter. And it was a really good scene. I think it was about this was in The Genes of Isis, the Egypt story, the first novel. And I won't go into what the scene was, but I also now look for dramatic scenes that need to be written out, to be written down, rather than just alluded to in passing, because they're the stuff of what your writing is about, the dramatic scenes. So it's kind of, you've got to have a sixth sense almost to pick out what those scenes are, lest they, pass you by. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose you have to take emotion out of it as well, and look at it from a reader's point of view instead of from, that's what you wrote and you want to keep it because it's, part of you. You have to take your emotion away from it, and like, no, it doesn't work. It's got to go.
Yeah, it's not easy. They call it killing your babies, don't they?
Yeah.
How to kill your babies.
Since we last spoke, have you made more author friends and more contacts in the writing community?
Probably made less, actually. Because I guess of COVID, I used to be member of a writing group in Bristol, but I think they've been meeting online. But I think writing groups are really good for when you're starting and need support. But I kind of got to the point now where I'm kind of more self-sufficient, I suppose. I have one or two writing friends who I'm in touch with. But I'm not sure I'm necessarily made any new ones. Perhaps online, still a member of a few Facebook writing groups. There's a historical fiction writing group, which has really quite a broad membership, which is always good. So probably no, but mostly due to circumstance, yeah.
Are you looking at doing any sign-in events or any events next year?
I've been doing events all year, actually. I found a good niche with working with W.H. Smith, and they kind of allow localish authors to come and do book signings in their shops, and I think over this year I've done about 25. I've been doing it every week for months, basically. They take a percentage of the cut, but it gets my name out, and because I'm not well known, people say to me, "Oh, I've never heard of you," and I said, "If you'd have heard of me, I wouldn't be here. I'm only here because you've not heard of me." Think about it. So last week I was last Friday and Saturday I was in Cardiff. Next Friday and Saturday I'm in Bath, at W.H. Smith's, and the weekend after that I'm in Yeovil, the weekend before Christmas. I should probably have a couple of months off in January and February because they're really quiet times, but also that will allow me to bash on with my novel, and then probably take up signings again in towards Easter. So I've made a lot of contacts with the managers, because mostly it's up to the local managers to decide, and they take the books on a sale or return basis, and it allows obviously a bit of publicity as well around the event. So yeah, I'm really pleased to have had that opportunity and to continue to have it. In fact, the other day I think I sold, what were the books I've sold through my publisher, I sold my 1,000th book, which I was well pleased about, in the last, since 2018, so 4 years.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, ebooks don't seem to do so well. That's all paperbacks. The ebooks, I like to keep them available, but they don't sell as well. Again, because people will only buy them, I think, if they've met me and they don't want to buy the paperback. But at least there's that option. So yeah.
And what's been your standout moment so far since you started writing?
So what do you mean by standout?
Your favourite moment you thought, I've made it, or this is cool, or this is what I've always wanted?
I've made it.
You've written 3 books, so that makes you an author, no matter how many. It does. And I won't have it said otherwise.
No, 4 books actually.
4
but
books,
there you
yeah,
go.
sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah, I wasn't belittling it, but I don't know. Probably holding the first book was probably the standout moment. It's a really nice moment. I think I'd worked 6 years on that book. Started with 180,000 words and ended with 105,000. That's what I mean about learning the art of editing. I didn't just take a clipper. I took a flamethrower, to but holding the book with the cover, and it's just such a huge amount of work goes into a book. But of course, the more you do it, the more cognizant, aware, and hopefully skilled you get at telling a story, entertaining, and speculating about life and living. Yeah, so I'd say that would be the moment.
And what do you like to do when you're not writing?
I like to watch sport, live sport on TV. I watch football, not that much, because there is such a lot of live sport. I could watch it all day. I watch a bit of cricket, and I mean, this morning I went to a yoga class, which I've taken up again. I started that in my 20s years ago. And, it's really good for you. So I enjoy that. And running a sort of a bookshop from my office, I suppose, because doing 25 book signings in different WH Smith stores takes a huge effort of ordering books, delivering them, doing the signing, sending the invoice, doing the bookkeeping of it. So that's not necessarily what I enjoy doing, but it's part of the opportunity of doing those signings. And if other authors are listening, if they want to contact me, please do. I'm happy to share the experiences and how to approach these guys, because there are opportunities there, but you kind of got to be able to front it, and you really do have to believe in your work, because of course it's all very well, you can hold your book up, but when you're talking to a stranger and they say, well, what's your book about then, and there you are. You have to try and interest them, shall I say, not convince, but interest them. But hey, unless you put yourself in that position, you don't know what you're going to say. So it's all good stuff. It's all good personal development, isn't it? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there you are. I don't suppose before you started this that you would be talking to all these strange men and women from your living room, and yet there you are. You're a confident interviewer. You come across. You know about writing. You know about books. You know about people. And you're learning all this stuff as you go. So everything has its kind of side benefits, doesn't it? So
Yeah, I
and
used to be quite shy and stuff as well, so I never thought I'd be doing this ever.
yeah, exactly. There you go. So you've overcome. I think most people are, Donna. Most people are. But you look at young children, and a lot of them are shy. Hiding behind their mother's skirt, so to speak. So you could actually argue that it's quite a natural state, not an unnatural one, and yet the world we live in sort of suggests that it's unnatural. But I actually think it's quite natural to be shy. But if you see where I'm trying to come from, you still got to get up and sing a song, haven't
you? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to start singing.
No, not me. No, everybody would turn off if we started.
Yeah, there's no need for that.
There's no need. Maybe Trixie can come on. Whoa, whoa.
Yeah, she probably would actually.
Does she do a bit of singing?
She doesn't make too much noise. She barks a lot in the garden.
Okay.
But yeah, she hasn't. We've not heard her yell or anything yet. So
okay, yeah, maybe that will come with her confidence.
Yeah, bless her.
Yeah. Just for your listeners, if they don't know, Trixie is Donna's dog.
Yeah, she usually makes a cameo appearance, but she hasn't today. She hasn't somewhere. Today. Yeah. But you did see her when we first started talking, so
we did. Yeah.
Yeah, little cutie. So you're currently working on your latest book. Where's this one set?
Well, I've just circumnavigated the globe.
Right. Okay.
in 1570, with a fellow named Francis Drake. I've just got back to England, and my character is he's found himself mixed up with a fellow named Francis Walshingham, who was Elizabeth I's spy master, and because he's got certain gifts, shall we say, they're quite keen for him to work for them, but he's gone off looking for somebody else, and he's got mixed up with some people called I don't know what I'd call them, children of Egypt. Would you know what I'm talking about if I mentioned children of Egypt? Well, apparently in the 1500s, early 1500s, gypsies arrived in this country from Egypt. They reckon originally they might have been from India, but they first arrived in 1500 via Egypt, and they used to be called Egyptians, but the name got shortened to gypsies.
Okay.
So he's got involved, the characters got involved with gypsies, and of course they have quite a lot of truck with supernatural things, which is what my story's about, and most of my stories are. But so this again is a mix of history and fiction. And like I said in the beginning, it's taking the B road to tell the story of the Armada, which is where I'm going to get to eventually. So that's what that's where I am at the moment, somewhere on the South Downs, Devil's Dyke, I think I am at the moment. The Devil's Dyke, somewhere north of Brighton.
Of course, where else would you be?
I know. Yeah, you go to all sorts of places. I think you have a sort of virtual passport as a writer to go to all these different places, and of course, no one can stop you. You know, having spent a year or two in the far northeast end of the Great Wall, I'm back in England.
Yeah, for a little while anyway.
For a little while anyway, yeah. Who knows what happens after that? Yeah.
And then do you have any ideas of what you're going to do after that?
No, not really. This project's looking like it's going to be quite a long one, so I'm not really projecting beyond that at the moment. I don't know. I don't know what might come after that. I honestly don't. This might be the last book. I don't know, or my last one for a while. You know, I think promoting 4 books and then promoting a 5th. I don't know how it will work, but yeah, I'm still enjoying writing. So I'll see what I'll see.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
No, I don't think so. I think we've had a good run. It's coming up for an hour, isn't it? Or just
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
So thank you very much for hosting the event, Donna.
You're welcome.
Good to have a chat with you.
Always.
Hopefully we'll get around to doing the other 2 books in due course and
No
see
doubt,
what we make of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of got into these blog tours actually. I've actually got 2 on at the moment. One for that first novel and one for this one, The Old Dragon's Head. But the one for the Genes of Isis is an American one, which I kind of think is more the audience that's suitable for that kind of almost like mythological fantasy, because it's got sort of biblical references in it and the flood and fallen angels, which I don't know, it's been written about quite a lot anyway, the Nephilim and things. But again, I take the B road,
Yeah.
a completely different story to everybody else. Well, when it's in a way you've got to, you know, because the market is so swollen, so thick with stories that you've got to come up with something different, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
So would you like to tell everyone where they can get your books from and where they can find out more about you or contact you if they'd like to?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I have a website, justinnewland.com, where you can buy the books and see my latest events, reviews, blogs, although I don't write that many blogs, but I'm quite active on Facebook with sort of thoughts for the day and things. But they can buy the books online, and there's actually a little option in the website, my website, to put in a dedication. So I can write the dedication and send it to the people. Alternatively, there's always the main outlets, Waterstones, Smiths, or any independent bookshop can order it, Amazon. In fact, I did a trawl of online bookshops where my books appear, and it's just all worldwide, although they don't stock the book. Because it's on some catalogue, presumably the Gardner's or the Bertram's catalogue, it appears everywhere in South Africa, in China, Australia, India, South America, you know, Canada, everywhere. So yes, it's generally available. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. You take care of yourself, and Trixie, and lovely to talk to you.
You too.
And thank you for having me on your channel. You almost got a channel now, haven't you?
Yeah.
Donna's channel. Yeah, go for it.